first question we had is from Jody. So Jody, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Some people recommend attending to the present and that is helpful towards realizing the self. But that would mean attending to Maya all the time, just as the past is Maya and the future is Maya. How is that helpful?
Right, okay.
Thank you.
It depends on how we understand the present. Generally, when it is said, attend to the present, people think we should attend to what is happening here and now. But whatever is happening in the flow of time. Time is always flowing from past to future. So what is happening can only happen within time. So but that is not the precise present. If we think carefully about what time is, if we try to find the exact present moment, a moment before is past, a moment ahead is future. So if we analyze it deeply, the present is an infinitesimally minute moment, which is an interface between the past and the future. That is where the past ends and the future begins. That is the present. So the exact present, the precise present moment, is infinitesimally small. It's a moment without any duration, because there is no gap between the past and the future. It's just it's like where one ends and the other begins. So in that infinitesimally small moment, which is the precise present, no change can take place. Change can take place only in the flow of time. Only you must have time. There must be a certain duration of time for any change to take place. So in the precise present moment, there is nothing happening. There is just stillness, just being. That is one way. So if we're attending to what is like, some people recommend whatever you do, you should do mindfully. You should eat slowly, you should go about your work slowly and have your mind on that. That is attending to something other than ourselves. But if we try to attend to the precise present moment, what is it that makes the present moment present and the present place here present? I mean, what makes a certain point in time and a certain point in space present? It is the presence of ourself. We are the presence, but make the present present. You understand what I mean? So what exists in the precise present moment and the precise present place is not any phenomena, not anything that is changing. It is only ourself. It is because of our presence here and now that this point in time seems to be now, and this point in space seems to be here. So we are the present. So attending to the present moment, if understood correctly, means attending only to ourself, to that which is ever present. In this context, it's useful to bear in mind what Bhagavan teaches us in verse 15 of Uludunapadu. What he says there is, past and future stand holding the present. That is, means the past and future depend on the present. While occurring, they too are actually the present. So that is, each moment in time is present when it occurs. When it has passed, we call it past. When it is yet to come, we call it future. What makes the past and the future is the present moment. So past and future both depend on the present. And while each past moment was occurring, it was present. And while each future moment is occurring, it will be present. Therefore, he concludes, Nihuru Andre. That means that can be interpreted in several ways. It can mean the present, the only one, meaning implying the present is the only time, or it can be taken to mean the present alone exists, or the present alone is all these three times. We can interpret it in several ways, but the implication of any interpretation is that there are not actually three times, past, present, and future. There's only one, namely the present. The present alone is what is real. And it's the present that appears as past and future. Then in the final sentence, he says, not knowing the reality of now, trying to know the past or future is like trying to count without one. The word for count can also mean count or calculate or evaluate. So if you don't know if someone asks you for 5 kilos of apples, if you don't know what a kilo is, you're not able to evaluate what 5 kilos of apples mean. Only if you know the value of a kilo, then you can know the value of 5 kilos. Likewise, if we don't know the truth of the present, we cannot know the truth of the past and future. What is the truth of the present? We alone are the truth of the present, because we are what is ever present. So we can know the truth of time only by knowing ourselves. When we know ourselves, we will find that we are timeless. We are immutable, ever unchanging. Time is what makes us aware of the passing of time is change. In sleep, no change occurs. So we are not aware of any time in sleep. When we wake up, then we say, we from the perspective of our waking mind, we say, oh, I was asleep for 8 hours or whatever. But while we're actually asleep, we're not aware of any passing time because no change is occurring in sleep. Sleep is a state just of being as we actually are. That's verse 15. In verse 16, he says, when we investigate, except we, where is time and where is place? The word he uses here for except we, the word for except, very difficult to adequately translate into English. But what the implication of this rhetorical question is that when we investigate, we find that there's no time or place, there is only ourself. And then he says in the next sentence, if we are the body, we will be ensnared in time and place. Are we the body? Since we are the one, now, then, and always, the one in place, here, there, and everywhere, there is only we. Time and place do not exist. So when people talk about the present, they're talking about the present as a moment in time, as a certain duration in time. But actually, what if we analyze deeply, the present has no duration. And because it has no duration, nothing happens in the present. What exists in the present is only being and awareness. That is ourself. That is what we actually are. So it is we who make the present seem present. So if it's understood correctly, attending to the present means attending what is ever present, namely ourselves. If we don't understand it in this way, if we understand the present as being the moment in which things are currently happening, that is not the precise present moment, but that's a certain duration in time. That is, there has to be without a duration, nothing can happen. So instead of when people think they're attending, when people are attending to what seems to be happening now, they're not actually attending to the precise now. They're attending to a moment before and a moment after now. Because our power of attention, until our power of attention becomes very subtle, we are not able to fix it on the precise now. And when we fix it on the precise now, we'll find what that precise now is nothing but ourself. our own being, our own existence, our own awareness. Does that help to clarify that?
Yeah, that makes sense. I followed. So this attending on the present that people recommend, they're talking about, they give examples like, if you're chopping vegetables, think only about chopping vegetables. If you're walking in the woods, in fact, they recommend walking in nature,
Yes.
attending only to the sounds and the crunching of the leaves or whatever.
That may be a nice exercise to calm the mind down, but it cannot take us very far. It's only a superficial calmness we can achieve thereby. If we want to achieve the eternal calmness of being as we actually are, we shouldn't attend to anything that is happening. We should attend to that which is ever present, that which is ever unchanging, that which is unaffected by the passing of time. That is only ourself. All phenomena are constantly changing. So they're in the flow of time. So if we're attending to chopping vegetables or walking, it takes time to chop vegetables. It takes time to walk. Anything that occurs in time, not in the precise present moment. If we find the precise present moment, we will find that nothing is happening at all. It's just being.
Thank you, Michael. I thought that was the answer. It never quite made sense to me, although it does calm the mind. It's true.
Yeah. I mean,
better than thinking about the past and future.
This is a very good question you've asked, because many people they hear, oh, be in the present, and they think, oh, that sounds very nice. Let me be in the present. And it seems to be a nice exercise, because if we try to do things mindfully, we do achieve a certain amount of calmness. But that is just dealing with symptoms. It's not dealing with the root disease. The root disease is ego. And so long as the root, that ego is there, problems will be there. So if we treat the symptoms, it may be nice for a little while, but in the present moment, not only sometimes pleasant things happen, like we walk in the woods or we chop vegetables. But those aren't the only things that happen in this world. All sorts of unpleasant things happen. Disease comes, bereavement comes, death comes, all these things come. So just calming our mind superficially in the approximate present moment is okay up to a certain point, but it's not going to solve the root problem. Our root problem is that we have risen as ego, and we are constantly aware of ourselves as a body and aware of things other than ourselves. If we want to attain eternal peace, we have to eradicate this ego. We can eradicate, but ego is nothing but a false awareness of ourselves. We can eradicate ego only by being aware of ourselves as we actually are. And when can we be aware of ourselves? Only here and now. So many very deep spiritual teachings are misunderstood by people and get watered down.
Michael, could that be said to be that the present moment is presence itself?
Present. But what makes the present moment present? It's
presence itself.
It's our presence there. Because we are present, this moment seems to be present. So the point in time where we are present, we call now the present. The point in space where we are present, we call here. Everything, all time and space is only relative to ourselves. We are the center of time and space.
And it's also the same place as silence?
Yes, because, as I say, the present, if we analyze it deeply, the present isn't a duration in time. The present is that infinitesimally fine gap between the past and the future. It has no duration. Because it has no duration, nothing happens in it. because nothing happens in it. It's a state of perfect silence. So we can find perfect silence only in the now, but it has to be the precise now. The being now, not the doing now, we can say. Not the happening now, but the being now.
Right.
Is it then also equal to that little gap at the end of the out breath before the next in breath where nothing happens?
But that gap has some duration. There's a gap between the in breath and the out breath. It has a certain duration. It is even a durationless moment. A moment without any duration is the present. So it's beyond all phenomena. Breathing or not breathing, that happens in time. But the present moment is actually beyond time, the precise present moment.
So what in us then recognizes that, because mind is always off time?
Because mind is always, so long as we allow our mind to go away from ourselves, so long as we direct our attention towards anything other than ourselves, we are caught in time and space. When we turn our attention back to face ourselves, then we transcend time and space. Then we remain in the timeless present. Timeless present because it's unchanging. So long as any change is occurring, we are in the flow of time. So the timeless present is beyond all change. The state of the state of just being, of perfect silence.
I never thought I'd hear a logical explanation to the non-existence of time.
Yes.
That was great. Thank you. I've written it down. I took notes because I'll need them to recreate it for myself.
Right.
Jody, you have a couple more questions here.
Do you want me to go forward?
Yeah, you have, I think, 2 more questions.
Thank you. It says, who am I? On page 7, it says, thought indeed is the nature of the mind. And then it goes on to say, till the time of death, the mind keeps breath in the body. So it's thought, which is the nature of the mind, that keeps breath in the body. You've told us that when the mind, thought, ego is gone, so is Maya. Is it also true that when the mind, thought, ego is gone, the breath will stop?
Yes, but the breath will stop means, in this context, it doesn't mean we just stop breathing. That is everything, as Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Uludunapati, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. So ego is the first thought, it's the thought I. Why Bhagavan always emphasizes that of all thoughts, this thought I, the ego, is the first thought, because all other thoughts are objects known by ego. Ego is the subject, other thoughts are the object. So it is the thought that thinks all other thoughts, the thought that is aware of all other thoughts. So ego is the root of all thoughts. So and according to Bhagavan, all phenomena are just thoughts. The whole world is nothing but thoughts. It is what we see as the world. It is just sense impressions, sights, sounds, tastes, smells, and tactile sensation. Take away these 5, and where is there any world? So the world is nothing but these sense impressions, and sense impressions are nothing but mental impressions. In other words, they're nothing but thoughts. So according to Bhagavan, all phenomena, even the physical phenomena, are nothing but thoughts. So when ego is dissolved, all thoughts come to an end. So breathing occurs within the body. When all phenomena disappear, body, breathing, everything ceases. This is in the essay version of Nana. Bhagavan rewrote the question and answer version as an essay. And in the essay version, this is paragraph 8. When Bhagavan first wrote it, he wrote it in a certain form. That was about in sometime maybe around 1925, 26, around that time. Later, the earlier question and answer version was modified by some devotees to make it, when Bhagavan rewrote it, Nana, as an essay, he improved on it in many ways and he refined it in many ways. So they incorporated the changes that Bhagavan had made in the essay version in the question and answer version. So they created a new question and answer version. But then at some point in the 1930s, 3 extra sentences were added, which were not there in the original. I assume that someone asked Bhagavan a question, and seeing that that person wasn't able to grasp the deeper truth of his teaching, Bhagavan would have given, as a concession, he would have given a diluted explanation. That is, one sentence he says in this paragraph, therefore, when the mind ceases or subsides, the prana also ceases. And when the prana ceases, the mind ceases. So someone presumably asked Bhagavan, what about in sleep? The breathing continues in sleep, even though the mind isn't there. According to Bhagavan, the body exists only in the view of others. Actually, the truth is that there is no body, no world, nothing. There is just ourselves, awareness. But when we come back to waking state, or when we rise again as ego, we project this dream we call the waking state. In this dream, we see other people, and those other people say that they saw our body existing while we were asleep. So we believe that the body of the world continues even while we're asleep. So that's like a person in dream believing that the dream world exists even while sleeping. The dream world exists only when we see it. Likewise, according to Bhagavan, waking world exists only when we are perceiving it. It doesn't exist when we don't perceive it. But the person who asked this question, saying the breath continues even when the body is asleep, obviously didn't understand or wasn't yet ready to understand the deeper teachings of Bhagavan. So I assume these 3 sentences were a reply given by Bhagavan as a concession to that person, that is their level of understanding. What he says in the 3 sentences which were added, as I say, we have to assume this was said by Bhagavan, but we can't be sure that this was said by Bhagavan. However, in sleep, even though the mind has subsided, the prana does not cease. It is arranged thus by the ordinance of God for the purpose of protecting the body, and so that other people do not wonder whether the body has died. When the mind ceases, subsides or disappears in waking and in samadhi, the prana ceases. So this is a diluted explanation which seems to have been added at a later, well, it was definitely added later, and because it was allowed to remain there, I assume it was probably an explanation that Bhagavan gave, but it is not his pure teaching. So according, as I say, to sum up, according to Bhagavan, everything, all phenomena exist only when we rise as ego and see them. They exist only in our view. So when we don't rise as ego, no body, no world, no breath, nothing exists. Bhagavan's teachings are extremely deep and radical. And because not everyone is ready to accept them, often Bhagavan had to give diluted answers to suit people of different levels of spiritual maturity, different levels of understanding. That is, Bhagavan will never try to force anyone to believe something but then, or to accept something but they're not yet willing to accept. So the deeper teachings that Bhagavan has given us, they vote that for those of us who are willing to accept them, but he never forces it on anyone.
So, Michael, when I hear you say that, just to clarify, I also hear that the body does not actually, because its form does not actually physically disappear, but the state of consciousness is shifted. So there is not the awareness of the body as a form.
Where does the body exist except in awareness? The body, all forms appear only in the mind. In the absence of the mind, there are no forms.
There's no body.
Yes, exactly.
And then so it would seem you're saying, let's see if I get it. When one reaches pure awareness that everything's phenomena is gone.
Yes.
There's only being.
Yes. But
it's just the rest of us.
Our experience, because we reach pure awareness every day in sleep. It's not a matter of reaching in pure awareness. We remain as pure awareness, which is what we always actually are. In sleep, we remain only as pure awareness. Because we remain only as pure awareness, we are not aware of any phenomena. When we rise as ego in waking and dream, do phenomena appear? Do phenomena come into existence? Bhagavan said, as I say, in verse 26 of Ullanavu, Bhagavan said very clearly, he's not just talking about the appearance of the world, he's talking about the existence of the world. He says, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. Ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. That is our experience. In sleep, ego doesn't exist, nothing else exists.
So it's just the rest of us who are still in Maya, who dream, continue to dream that so-and-so still is.
Yes.
Okay. And we knew someone who was told she was a Jivan Mukta. And I certainly perceived her as breathing and laughing and talking to me, and she behaved as if she was, well, aware of her body, et cetera, et cetera. Was that my fantasy at that point?
There are all sorts of people who claim to be Jiva Muktas, but there is a saying in Tamil that Bhagavan often used to quote: those who have seen do not say, those who say have not seen. So those who say, I am self-realized, are not self-realized. Those who are self-realized don't say anything.
She didn't, to clarify, in justice to her, she never said it. Other people said it of her.
Yeah.
Okay. And, but I perceived her.
Yes.
Well, I guess that leads to my...
That is what we have to understand is we are now dreaming. So whatever we see in this dream is our own mental projection. So even the name and form of Bhagavan, even Bhagavan seems to us to have been a person who lived for 54 years in Tiruvannamalai, giving teachings and everything. But Bhagavan's fundamental teaching is, I am not this body. What I am is just pure awareness. So Bhagavan said, only in the view of the Ajnani, but the Jnani seems to be a person, seems to be a body. In the view of the Jnani, there is only Jnana. In fact, he used to say, Jnana me Jnani, that is, Jnana alone is the Jnani. Jnana means pure awareness. So it is only pure awareness that can know pure awareness. So Bhagavan is nothing but pure awareness. But in our view, he seems to be a person. Why? Because we take ourselves to be a person, we take him to be a person. But if If we know
Well, really,
ourselves,
on that note, though, you couldn't actually have received the teaching if there weren't a person delivering it. I mean, that's why we're all incarnate, to have this experience.
yes. But that is our own real nature appears in our dream to tell us to turn within. But Bhagavan often used the analogy of there's a belief that elephants are so afraid of lions. If a lion appears in the dream of an elephant, the elephant will be so afraid it will wake up. So Bhagavan often used to use this analogy and said, just like the lion that appears in the elephant's dream is unreal, but it brings about a real awakening, the name and form of the guru is unreal, but it brings about the real awakening, because the name and form of the guru appears to tell us to turn within. Because of the natural flow of our mind is to go outwards, it is necessary that for grace to appear in the form of guru to tell us to turn back within.
So Michael, this gets a little tricky here. Not only is the body not real, it's never been, it's not real, but the dream of the body being real isn't real either.
No.
It sort of leaves the illusion of the dream of the body.
There is only one thing. There is only one thing that is real, and that is you.
Yes. So Savita just said, as I'm sure I've said many times, so that's why the body is made to deliver the message to the consciousness. But
Yeah.
there's no need for that.
Not to the
There's
consciousness,
only-
to the mind, to the ego.
Yeah.
The ego
So
is not
I'm going
the
to jump real quick.
consciousness.
This is so closely interwoven with a question that I have, and I'll skip you don't have to go into a long answer when you get to my question on it. Whether you call it the body or the dream or the illusion that we think we're aware of that doesn't exist,
Yes.
where does that thought that it exists come from?
Everything comes from you. You alone are what is real. If you,
Okay.
if you
I
invent,
interrupted Jody.
but now you're aware of yourself as if you're a body. So because you are real, when you mistake yourself to be a body, the body you mistake yourself to be seems to be real. And because that body is a part of a world, the whole world seems to be real. So in any dream, we always experience ourselves as a body. And consequently, that dream body seems to be real, and hence the whole dream world seems to be real. So long as we are dreaming, it seems to be real. But as soon as we wake up, our identification with that dream body is severed. We no longer identify that dream body as I. So we at once recognize, oh, it was just a mental projection. But so long as we are experiencing that dream body as I, it all seems to be real.
Thank you. Go ahead.
That is, Bhagavan's teachings, as I say, are Bhagavan's teachings are extremely simple, extremely clear, but they're very, very deep and subtle. And it takes time for us to fully take on board all that he has taught us. And there must be a willingness on our part to accept it. So long as we are strongly attached to the world, to our life in this world, we will not be able to understand Bhagavan's teachings. It's only to the extent we are ready to be detached from this world and from our body and from everything, but we'll be willing to accept Bhagavan's teaching. But if we have difficulty accepting all that Bhagavan taught us, it's okay. At first, it may be difficult to accept. But if we try to put what he taught us into practice, the more we turn our attention within, the more the inner clarity, the more, that is, when we are turning our mind within, we are turning towards the original light, the light of awareness that illumines all this. So when we turn our attention towards the original light, we are, so to speak, bathing our mind in light. So as we turn within more and more and more, our mind, more and more clarity shines in our mind. And then it becomes more and more clear the truth of what Bhagavan has taught us. And it becomes easier for us to accept it. And we become less and less strongly attached to all these phenomena.
Okay, Judy, you had one more question there?
I
Do you have
don't,
a question?
mean to take all of Michael's time. I can save
No,
my
no,
life.
it's okay. Whatever questions you ask, it leads to useful discussion. So don't, I mean, we've got time, I think, for all the questions.
Thank you, Michael. The last question is about reincarnation, which I'm a little confused about because I see it as yet more Maya.
Yes, yes.
So when Jiva, I don't know, I hope, well, when a person leaves his body, but was not self-realized, they just face more Maya after death. Is that correct? They stay in the, I don't quite understand.
We see other bodies dying. We never see our own body dying because our present life is nothing but a dream. So when we actually experience death, it is just like the ending of a dream. Though the dream has ended, so long as the dreamer exists, it will continue dreaming one dream after another. The dreamer is ego. As ego, we are now dreaming this present dream. When this dream comes to an end, we may subside in sleep for a while, or we may immediately start dreaming another dream, but dreams will continue. What is called reincarnation, that people have all sorts of ideas about reincarnation, but where the soul leaves the body, I mean, it waits for another body and it enters that body. It is not like that, actually, according to how Bhagavan has explained it. This is all a dream. In sleep, we remain without dreaming. And when ego rises again, it projects another dream. So when this dream, the dream of our present life, comes to an end, we then dream another life.
So the ego can continue without a body.
Yes, the ego can never exist without attaching itself to a body, but it is not dependent on any one particular body. Like in our present state, we are now taking this body to be I. In dream, we're not at all aware of this body, but we take some other body to be I. So whatever body we take to be I is just a projection of ego. So whenever ego rises, it projects a body, takes that body to be I, and through the five senses of that body, it projects the world.
Is there a way out?
Yes. What is ego? Ego is nothing but the false awareness, I am this body. That is, whenever we rise as ego, we are always aware of ourselves as I am this body. And there are two characteristics, defining characteristics of ego. That is, as ego, we are always aware of ourselves as I am this body. Not necessarily this body, some body or other, but whatever body we currently experience as I, that is this body. So I am this body. That is the one characteristic of ego. That is, ego is always aware of itself as I am this body. Secondly, when we're aware of ourselves as I am this body, we're also aware of other things. So the nature of ego is to be aware of itself as a body and consequently to be aware of other things. So whenever we rise as ego, we are aware of ourselves as a body and we are aware of phenomena. When we don't rise as ego, as in sleep, we're not aware of any body and we're not aware of any phenomena. So all the body and all phenomena are nothing but a projection of ego. That's why in verse 26 of Ulu Dinapadu, that I referred to earlier, Bhagavan said, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Ego itself is everything. Ego alone is everything. That is, all this vast universe and all phenomena are nothing but an expansion of ego, a projection of ego. So we rise as ego and we see ourselves as all these things. Because ego, your question was, how is there a way out of it? Yes, there is, because ego is a false awareness of ourselves. It's an awareness of ourselves as something other than what we actually are. That is, we're aware of ourselves as I am this body. But this body cannot be what we actually are because we are aware of ourselves even in the absence of this body. In dream, we're not aware of this body. We're aware of ourselves as some other body. In sleep, we are not aware of any body at all, but we still exist and are aware. So we exist in the absence of any body. So this awareness, I am this body, is a false awareness. It's a mistaken awareness of ourselves. So since it's a wrong awareness of ourselves, we can destroy ego only by being aware of ourselves as we actually are. So how to be aware of ourselves as we actually are? What we actually are is pure awareness. What pure awareness means is awareness that is not aware of anything, just aware. So pure awareness is not aware of anything other than itself. Itself obviously isn't an object of its awareness. That is, just by being aware, we are aware, I am aware. So we cannot be aware without being aware, but we are aware. So self-awareness is implicit in awareness. So pure awareness is not aware of anything, just aware. So long as we are aware of anything other than ourselves, we seem to be something other than pure awareness. So in order to experience ourselves as pure awareness, we need to experience nothing other than ourselves. How to experience nothing other than ourselves? Only by attending to ourselves. If we attend to ourselves so keenly that we thereby cease to be aware of anything else, we will then be aware of ourselves as pure awareness. When we're aware of ourselves as pure awareness, ego is thereby eradicated once and for all. In fact, it is seen that there never was any such thing as ego. We were always just pure awareness, never anything other than that. So there is a way out, but the way out is not outside, but inside. So it's not a way out, it's a way in. The way out is the way in is the way out.
So again, that seems a little tricky. Sometimes and I have posed this question before, I think, in the circle. Sometimes the ego seems to be very aware, but it's still ego self that's aware, and it's not really almost discernible that it is. How does one, if there ever were such a moment, is it just crystal clear, or is there a way of self-checking self-awareness?
It is crystal clear. It is crystal clear. Because when we are aware of ourselves as we actually are, ego is dissolved in that light of pure awareness. And pure awareness never has any doubt about anything, because pure awareness is always aware of itself as it is. We are not never going, that is, as an ego or as a person, we are never going to realize what we actually are. When we lose ourselves completely in that light, that is what is called self-realization. So it's not the ego that is going to realize itself. The ego has to surrender itself, dissolve into that light of pure awareness, and then what remains is that pure awareness which is ever aware of itself. That's why Bhagavan often said, jnana is not a new knowledge to be acquired. There is never a moment when we do not know ourselves. The problem is, instead of knowing ourselves just as I am, which is what we actually are, we know ourselves as I am this or I am that. Remove the this or that and remain just as I am, That is what is called the attainment of jnana. But it's not an attainment, it's just getting rid of a false knowledge, but real knowledge alone remains.
And yet it's really, really strong when you, like you said, when you sleep and there's no ego because we're not aware in that way. Though as soon as you wake up as ego.
Yes, yes. It's only ego that wakes up. Yeah, as you say, as ego, we wake up.
Okay. So we're really never rid of it until we're rid of it.
Exactly.
You
But
make
when
it
we are
sound
rid of it, we will realize that we were always rid of it. We never had it.
Okay, or that.
It is the perfect solution. Once we are aware of ourselves as we actually are, we will know, but we were always that and never anything other than that.
Michael, you make all this sound so easy. I've
Right.
heard it discussed this way before. You're wonderful at it, and your references to Ramana really stating these concepts as simple concepts.
It's not me who's making it.
understand
It's no one
too.
who makes it easy. And it is indeed, it is extremely easy. What can be easier than knowing ourselves? Why have we not yet realized ourselves? Because we are not yet ready to let go.
Mhm.
But it brings up the question yet again for me, which I've always passed this far in my journey with an A- or a B+, let's say, that nothing is real other than self. I even used to think as the ultimate self being the observer,
Yeah,
being the witness, and I would think, well, what is the witness? What is it the witness of?
yes,
And I thought, well, it would be the witness of everything, including the illusory idea that I exist, but without judgment, without prejudice, without memory, not memory, but without a decision about whether or not that's good or bad. You're telling me not even that is true. It's
not
it's
even
only
that.
the witness of
That is
self,
what,
only
that is
the
what
observer of self. It's
it's
only the
really-
awareness of the awareness.
Yes.
So when I hear it explained in simple terms about the magnitude of what it is that we're all here to learn,
Yes,
I think of it as being as difficult as having to jump over that mountain behind you, Arunachala, because those are almost fighting terms with anybody who's been in the body or thinks he's been in the body for 75 years,
yes,
maybe 75,000 experiences, I
Yeah.
might recall. But that's nonetheless what Ramana's asking us to do.
yes. But
Get rid of everything.
But he assures us there is nothing easier than this. It seems
Try.
it seems difficult to us only because of our unwillingness to let go.
Mhm.
That is, he said in verse 26, after saying, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Ego itself is everything. Then he concludes by saying, therefore, investigating what it is means what this ego is giving up everything. Because if we investigate ego will cease to exist. And when ego ceases to exist, everything ceases to exist. So long as we have desire and attachment for anything other than ourselves, we are not yet willing to surrender ourselves. It's our lack of willingness to surrender ourselves that makes it seem difficult.
Mhm.
But Bhagavan said, we're like a person standing on the ground and holding the branch of a tree. And we say, no, I can't let go of this branch of a tree because if I do, I'm going to fall. But we're already standing on the ground. We don't need to hold on to the branch. But it seems difficult to let go because we don't want to let go. If we're ready to let go, just let go of the branch and there we are. We're ever as we always are.
That becomes a little bit more, I hate to add one more question, but I'll make this brief.
Go.
There's one more question that's on my mind is in that I will never know if I'm detaching enough, sacrificing, giving up enough, whether or not I'm going to awaken, whether or not I'm destined to be self-realized into the one true self that only exists. because you keep repeating something that others in the field don't repeat, and that is that there is no self-enlightenment in this lifetime. There is no self-awareness in this lifetime. You say that Bhagavan has said that over and over again, and I believe you, yet
No, I'm not
Yes.
saying that. That's not what I'm saying. There is enlightenment here and now if you want it. But in order to be enlightened, you must lose yourself in that light. The light alone must remain. The light here means the pure awareness. When you lose yourself in the pure awareness, then there is no body world or anything. So it's ever available to us. Here and now, we can realize ourselves if we want to. But Ted will never realize himself. Michael will never realize himself. Because Ted and Michael are just false identifications. I am Michael, I am Ted. That is a false awareness. Even that I, that says I am Ted or I am Michael, even that I is not going to realize itself. When that I dies, what remains is self-realization, enlightenment, or whatever you want to call it. That is that pure awareness that is ever existing as it is. So it's only
very helpful.
we lose ourselves, but we find ourselves.
Thank you.
Bhagavan says in verse 21 of Uludunapadu, Bhagavan ends it very beautifully. That in what he says in verse 21 is, saying I'll just find the verse. He says, if it is asked, what is the truth of many texts that talk about oneself seeing oneself or oneself seeing God? That he said, if it is asked thus, the answer he gives is, since oneself is one, how is oneself to see oneself? If one cannot see oneself, how is one to see God? Again, he asks, all these are questions, but then he gives the answer. The final answer is Unadal Khan. Unadal means becoming food. Becoming food is seeing. What he means by becoming food is only when we are completely swallowed by that, when we lose ourselves in God or in that pure awareness, then we are seeing. So it's the enlightenment is nothing but the complete dissolution of the ego in that light. And then what is it that realizes that light? It's only the light knows itself. That is, pure awareness alone knows pure awareness. But even now, pure awareness knows pure awareness, because pure awareness never knows anything other than that. So it is. That's why Bhagavan said it is not a new knowledge we have to attain. All we need to do is to get rid of our false knowledge in the form of ego, and what remains is the true knowledge, the pure awareness.
Thank you.
So there's people talk about whether this person or that person is self-realized. There is no such thing as a self-realized person. A self-realized person is a contradiction in terms, because so long as we take ourselves to be a person, we don't know what we actually are. When we know what we actually are, we'll know that we were never a person.
That's the distinction I was confused about. Thank you.
So it is complete loss of ourself. We attain ourselves by losing ourselves. The same thing actually is said in the Bible in a bit of an obscure way. Unless you lose your life, you cannot gain your life. Something, I can't remember the exact words. Only he who loses his life will gain his life.
Rosemary, are we ready for you?
Yeah, let me pull my question up here. Okay, so on at least one previous occasion in satsang that I remember, possibly two, you unequivocally stated, I mean, this is kind of following along the lines of what you're already saying, Michael, but I'm just going to read it like I wrote it.
Right, right.
On at least one previous occasion in satsang that I remember, possibly two, you unequivocally stated that upon self-realization as taught by Ramana, no phenomena appears, no world, no people, nothing. This can be unsettling to we who still experience joy and love with loved ones, as well as anyone who enjoys but is not unduly attached to a profession or line of work. It even seems reasonable that someone might avoid, consciously or unconsciously, spiritual practice that could result in realization if the outcome of that practice yields no phenomena. Avoid. And I'll interject here. I do remember Ramana saying consciousness is not a void.
Yeah.
It's reminiscent of finally looking behind the curtain and finding only a microphone, like in The Wizard of Oz.
Right.
In Guru Vichakakovai, verse 81, Ramana speaks about conduct in the world. Reach the heart by clearly knowing your true nature and abide there permanently as that unattached supreme self without slipping from the state of knowledge. Then act according to the human role you have assumed, outwardly behaving as if, like all others in the world, you are experiencing joy and misery. And then just below that verse, this is verse 81, just below that, Muruganar states that sage Vashishta also gave similar advice to Sri Rama, that Ramana translated Vashishta's advice into Tamil verses. And that translation was, having investigated the various states of being and seeing firmly by the mind that state of supreme reality, play your part, O hero, ever in the world. You have known the truth, which is at the heart of all kinds of appearances. Without ever turning away from that reality, play in the world, O hero, as if in love with it, seeming to have enthusiasm and delight, seeming to have excitement and aversion, seeming to exercise initiative and perseverance, and yet without attachment, play, O hero, in the world. Released from all bonds of attachment and with equanimity of mind, acting outwardly in all situations in accordance with the part you have assumed, play as you please, O hero, in the world. So what does he mean by various states of being? And what does he mean by, or why does he salute the addressee as O hero? And the real thing that I'm trying to determine here is, why would he address conduct in the world for a realized being if realization is absorption into the absolute with no cognizance of phenomena? Would there be a world to conduct oneself in?
Okay. I'll deal with this in two parts. Firstly, what you've asked at first, and then with what you're asking about Guru Vichakakovai, verse 81.
Okay.
Yes, according to Bhagavan, when we are aware of ourselves as we actually are, ego is thereby eradicated, and in the absence of ego, there are no phenomena, no world, no people, nothing. However, as you say, he clarified that this is not a void. Though it is devoid of all phenomena, though it's devoid of both subject and object, subject is ego, the perceiver, all phenomena are objects, things perceived, though it's devoid of this duality of subject and object, it is the fullness of such Chitananda, of being. There's infinite being, infinite awareness, and infinite happiness. So it is not a void. Regarding what you say it seems reasonable that someone might avoid, consciously or unconsciously, spiritual practice that could result in realization if the outcome of the practice yields no phenomena. Well, in practice, we are all avoiding. Even though we may be practicing, we are avoiding going deep enough into the practice to lose ourselves, because we are not yet, because we still have attachment to the world and to phenomena. So until we are willing to give up our attachment to everything other than ourselves, we will avoid going deep enough into the practice to lose ourselves. So we don't actually have to worry about, we will lose ourselves in in the light of pure awareness only when we are willing to do so. We will never be forced to give up our hold on other things. So as we progress in our practice, the deeper we go in the practice, the more willing we become to let go of other things. And as I said, when we are turning within, we are, so to speak, bathing our mind in the light of pure awareness. So our mind is being clarified. As we go deeper in the practice, it becomes more and more clear to us the choice that we are faced with. We are either faced with the choice of infinite happiness, devoid of all phenomena, or clinging to these phenomena, which give us a mixture of iotas of pleasure and also pain. So which do we prefer? A state which is guaranteed to be a mixture of pleasure and pain, or a state in which there is just infinite happiness? We can reason with ourselves like this now, and obviously it's the obvious choice is it's much better to be in the state of infinite happiness, infinite satisfaction. But because of when we understand that at the superficial level of the mind, deep down we are still strongly attached to phenomena. We're still strongly attached to life as a person in this world. So long as the attachment is there, we are not willing to surrender ourselves completely. But if we are wise, we will at least try to follow this practice that Bhagavan has taught us, the practice of self-investigation and self-surrender. The more we follow this practice, the deeper we'll go. And the deeper we go, the clearer it becomes that the wisest choice is to let go of everything and lose ourselves in that state of infinite Satchidananda, infinite being, infinite awareness, and infinite happiness. So there's nothing to be worried about. We won't, until we are willing to surrender ourselves, we will not achieve self-realization. So we will not lose ourselves in the void, the so-called void, which isn't actually a void, but is actually fullness. We will not lose ourselves in that until we are willing to do so, until we are willing to give up everything and to be just as we actually are, which is infinite Satchidananda.
Can I just say,
yes.
I mean, I'm hearing what you're saying, but it sounds like you're contradicting yourself, and I know you're not, but I mean that's what it sounds like to me, because he did say how to conduct yourself in the world. What world is he talking about?
Right.
If there is no phenomena, if there is no pleasures, no this, no that, no whatever, what world is he talking about?
Okay. To understand verse 81 of Guru Vachaka Kovai, this is paraphrasing what Bhagavan says in 2 verses of Urudunapadu Anubandham. Those 2 verses are translation from Yoga Vasishtha. Yoga Vasishtha is a story of Rama. That is, according to, it is different to the normal Ramayana. It doesn't contradict the normal Ramayana, but it is a spiritual, it's an Advaitic story of Rama. That is, Rama was the son of a king. He was due to inherit the kingdom. So his father sent him to various gurus to learn the art of being a good king, of ruling justly and everything, and also being a warrior, because as a king you have to defend your people. So he learned all the skills that were necessary for a prince. After learning everything, he came back and he took interest in nothing. That is, he had reached a point of vairagya, that is of detachment, that he saw all this is meaningless. So I can't remember who the family guru was. It was some great sage. But when his father talked to that sage, I think it may have been Vishwamitra or some sage, then he said, no, you have to, the person who will solve this problem is Vashishta. Send him to Vashishta. So Rama was sent to Vashishta, and Vashishta then gave the teaching that is formed into a book, Yoga Vashishta. So he, at a certain point in that story, Rama attains, according to the story, Rama attains realization. After realization, Vashishta gives these instructions. But because this is a Puranic story, Puranic stories, they can be understood at different levels. And but it is what Vashishta says to Rama is not actually applicable to Vijnani. It's as if he's giving the teaching to Rama Vijnani, but actually he's teaching us as spiritual aspirants how we should live in this world. That is, when we are following this spiritual path, we come to understand the unreality of all these things. But each one of us has a certain destiny. In the case of Rama, his destiny was to be a king and was to rule his kingdom justly and punish the evildoers. So when Ravana came and stole his wife Sita, he had to go and fight a war with him and get her back. So he had to fight for dharma, for justice, for righteousness. That's his role. Because he is born as a king, that is the destiny of that body. Each one of us, like that, has a certain destiny. We're not all of us born as kings, so we don't have all the burdens that Rama had, but we have certain responsibilities. We may be married, we may have wife, children, husband, or we may have elderly parents, or we may have grown-up children who need our help. There's so many people, relatives and friends, who depend on us for various things. So each one of us has a certain role to play in this world. And we may have a certain profession. So whatever be our role in the world, we should play the role we have appropriate to that role. So if our role is to be a surgeon, we have to cut people. Normally, it's wrong to cut people. But if our role is a surgeon, we have to cut people in order to save them. So whatever our role may be, we have to act in the manner appropriate to the role we are to play in this world. This teaching, though it's seemingly given as a teaching to Rama, Vijnani, it's actually a teaching given to a spiritual aspirant. Because Vijnani needs no teachings. Vijnani knows all that is to be known. So it's in the context of the story, this is how this teaching was given as if to a jnani. That is why it is said, knowing all that is to be known, now you play your part in the world.
So would it be correct to say that if you're at a stage or whatever you want to call it, where there's no attachment, you're not attached to anything in the world, you're not really seeing the world as anything but awareness, anything but consciousness or whatever, you still have that destiny to play out, and then you can't be totally absorbed until right at death because of the destiny that you have to play out?
Even that is one way of explaining it. It is sometimes explained like that, but even that is not true. Bhagavan has, in another verse in Uludinapadu Anubandham, Bhagavan says, the answer that is given, that for the jnani, the agamya and the sanchita, agamya means the actions that we do by our will. The sanchita means the store of the fruits of past agamya, the actions that we've done in past lives by our will, those fruits that we haven't yet experienced. And a selection of those fruits are from the sanchita is destined in each life for us to experience as prarabdha. So in some texts, it is said that for the jnani, the agamya and the sanchita comes to an end, but the prarabdha continues for the duration of the body. And sometimes even Bhagavan seems to say that. But in one verse in Uludinapadu Anubandham, he says, this answer is given as a reply to the questions of others. What he means by others is those who are not yet ready to accept the deeper teaching. And then he repudiates this idea by saying, just as if a husband dies, all his 3 wives become widows. When the doer, ego, dies, all the 3 karmas are destroyed. So for the jnani, there is no prarabdha. However, because we see the jnani as a body, for every body there is a prarabdha. So Bhagavan, for example, he attained realization at the age of 16. He was then lost in pure awareness. He was nothing but pure awareness after that. But so in his view, there was no body, no world, nothing. But in our view, he lived for another 54 years and gave us all these teachings. So in our view, his body seemed to have a certain prarabdha. So the prarabdha is not for the jnani, the prarabdha is for the body which we take to be a jnani. The jnani doesn't take to be the jnani. That is why we have to, when we read any spiritual teaching, we need to read with discrimination, and we need to understand at what level the different explanations are appropriate at different levels. So sometimes the explanations that are given at one level seem to contradict the other explanations given at another level. But actually, there is no contradiction, because the explanations that are given at one level are appropriate to that level. The explanations that are given at another level are appropriate to that level. So the deepest teaching of the core of Bhagavan's teaching is that when ego goes, everything goes. These teachings, this Guruvaccha Kakavai verse 81, as I say, this is based on what is said in Vasistha. That is giving explanations at a different level, as if the jnani is still continuing as a person. But though it's addressed to the jnani Rama, it is indirectly taught to us that even while we are spiritual aspirants, we have to, so to speak, we have to live a double life. Outwardly, we have to behave according to a role we have. If we are married and we have children, we think that is the role we have to play. Or if we are a sannyasi, a monk or a nun or something, we've got a different role to play. So each one of us has, our body has a certain role to play in this world. That role we should play. But inwardly, we should be detached from all these things. That's why I say, as a spiritual aspirant, we are playing a double role. We have the outward role. We are living just like any other ordinary person, experiencing all the joys and sorrows of life. We're acting as if we have desire, as if we have detachment and everything. But inwardly, we should be trying to be free of attachment. We'll be trying to maintain equanimity in spite of all the ups and downs of life.
So, and why did he address him as "O hero"? Is
Because he's addressing it was Vasistha addressing Rama. Rama is a king. He's a great hero. So
so
it's addressing Rama as the hero, but it also has another meaning. In the Tamil verse, Bhagavan actually used the term Veera. Veera means hero. Another term that means exactly the same is Dhira. Dhira also means hero. Bhagavan often used to explain what Dhira, the deeper meaning of Dhira. Dhi means the mind or intellect. Ra means protective or restraining. So those who keep the mind, who curb the mind, who curb the outward going tendency of the mind, they are the Dhiras, they are the heroes.
okay.
So there's a lot of deep meaning, but all these things are at different levels. If we understand the deeper teachings of Bhagavan, we can understand all the other teachings in the appropriate context. We see them in perspective.
So the yana is kind of, or what we call a yani, even though he said there's no yanis, there's only yana, but what we refer to as a yani is really someone who is walking the razor's edge. They have one foot in
Well,
phenomenon.
it's
And
not
look what in
Yeah.
awareness.
as spiritual aspirants, we should be walking the razor's edge.
Right.
The jnani, there is
There's no razor's edge. There's just,
that is that when we talk about the jnani, we have to distinguish between the jnani as he seems to be to us. That is, to us, Bhagavan seems to be a person. He seems to have a body, he seems to have a mind, he seems to answer questions, and to be, when people came to Bhagavan with, someone had suffered some bereavement and they came to Bhagavan and were telling all their troubles to Bhagavan, Bhagavan would sometimes shed tears because he's living the life of a perfect person, a perfected person. But actually, that perfect person is not what he really is. What he really is that pure awareness. Because there's absolutely no ego in that person, the life lived by that person is the perfect life. So what is it? To put it in simple terms, what is driving that body, what we call as Bhagavan, it is nothing but God. It is nothing but grace, but is making that body behave in the appropriate way and give us these teachings and everything. But what but Bhagavan sometimes said, at one point, someone brought a radio to the ashram, and the radio was put in the hall beside Bhagavan, and it would be turned on during the news or something. So Bhagavan, and sometimes if there was a concert or something, it would be played. Not very often, but sometimes. So Bhagavan, because the radio was there, Bhagavan once pointed out to the radio and said, see, we hear all this talking and singing coming from this radio, but if we open it up, we find no one inside. Likewise with the jnani, that means with the body of the jnani, it seems to be talking and answering questions and everything. But if we open it, there's nothing. Not literally open it, but I mean, there's no ego inside. And he clarified about that. He said, the singing and talking that seems to be coming from the radio is not actually coming from the radio. It is coming from some other source. Likewise, the actions of the body and mind of the jnani are coming from some other source. And on another occasion, when someone asked him, Bhagavan, when we ask questions, where do your answers come from? He said, they come from the same source as the question. That is, what we are seeing manifested outwardly in the form of Bhagavan is actually our own real nature. So when we ask questions, the answers that we get are actually answers coming from our own real nature. They're coming from within us. That's why he said, from the same source from which the questions arise, the answers also come from the same source. So,
and what was he talking about in that verse about various states of being?
Of various states of being, that means all, it can mean the three states that we all experience, waking, dream, and sleep.
Oh, okay.
It can also mean, in mythology, they talk about different heavens and different hells and all these sort of things. And all those are nothing but states of mind.
Right.
It can have various, it can be interpreted in various different ways.
Okay. All right. Well, that puts a lot of light on that.
All the various states, all different states appear in whose view? In my view, in the view of I. That I is ego. So if we investigate the truth of all states, we come back to ego. And to know the truth of all states, we have to know the truth of ego. If we investigate the truth of ego, we find only pure awareness. So that is the ultimate truth of everything. So if we know ourselves, we know the truth of everything.
Okay. I'll take your word for this.
Yeah. Some of these things may seem a bit confusing. I can understand how it seems confusing, but in my experience, if we understand the core of Bhagavan's teachings, and this, other things we will then be able to see in perspective, and everything we'll see. Though different levels of teachings are given, we'll understand why different levels of teachings are given and why, in the context of different questions, different answers are appropriate. So,
Yeah,
Bhagavan's teachings are actually extremely consistent, but if we view them superficially, there may seem to be so many inconsistencies.
yeah,
But that is because we are not understanding the underlying thread that goes through them all. The one thread of consistency that is there throughout all his teachings.
yeah. All right. And this also follows along the same thread. In a previous satsang, if I understand you correctly, you stated, in my words, that the one taken for Ramana was not really Ramana. That's what you just explained a while ago, that he was actually a projection from the absolute into which he had been absorbed.
Yes.
And if this statement be true, why did Ramana pray to Arunachala, Shiva, to prolong his mother's life so that she could be prepared for absorption into the absolute? In other words, who was it that was praying, and why was it necessary if he had already been absorbed?
Okay. All the actions of Vijnani are according to the divine will. So we cannot adequately explain, because if we try to explain, we're explaining with our mind. So the simplest explanation is to say, whatever actions Bhagavan did, that was the divine will that he should do those actions. So some inner prompting was there that made him do that. Just like other hymns on Arunachala, Aksharam came to him spontaneously one day when he was going around the hill. Likewise with Arunachala Patikam and Arunachala Ashtakam, these came to him spontaneously. Particularly Arunachala Patikam, Bhagavan explained, the first line of the first verse was coming to him, or not even the first line, the first few words, Karunayalene, Karunayalene, those words kept on coming to his mind. And he was putting them aside, saying, what these words have got to do with me? But they kept on coming back. So finally he wrote that verse, beginning with those words, Karunayalene, and then that subsided. But then the next day, a group of words, beginning with the last word of the previous verse, came to his mind. So again, he wrote it. And in the end, he wrote 19 verses, 11 of them in 1 meter, which was called Arunachala Patikam, and 8 in another meter. But they're all, the last word or syllable or foot of each verse becomes the first of the next verse. So it's what's called Antadi. That is, the ending of one verse becomes the beginning of the next verse. So the first verse said with the word Anbe, O love. And the second verse begins Amburu Varunachala, addressing Arunachala as Arunachala, the form of love. So those came to him, and someone once said to Bhagavan, Bhagavan, you say, oh, whatever you teach, whatever verse you've written, you've never written of your own accord. It's always because other people have prompted you. Yes, it's true. Other people have prompted you to ask you questions, and for Murugan, you wrote Tuladunaptu and Upadeshwandya, and for other people you wrote other things. But at least in the case of Arunachala, Aksharam and Patikam and Ashtakam, you did these without any prompting. Bhagavan said, just like you people are prompting me from inside, that was from outside, that was Arunachala prompting me from inside. I don't do anything of my own accord. So whatever he does, it is according to the divine will. Because there is no ego there. There's no individual will is there at all. So it can only be the divine will that is acting through that body. So because his mother, and those verses, though superficially we can take those verses, that Bhagavan is praying for his mother to be cured of her fever, actually there's double meaning to all that he says there. Because the fever he's referring to can mean the fever that her body was suffering from at that time. It can mean also the fever of samsara, of worldly existence. So there's double meaning in all those verses. So though he, on one level, it's a prayer for his mother's recovery from a physical fever. On another level, it's a prayer for his mother's recovery from the fever of self-ignorance.
So was Bhagavan as a projection of the absolute, what he had to still be experiencing phenomena, right? He couldn't
In our view, yes.
be in this world without experiencing phenomena.
Yeah, in our view, yes.
Way we are projections of the absolute. That's all we can be, right?
Well, we are a projection of ego. That ultimately everything is, Bhagavan says, all that is outside, all that is seen outside comes only from within. That all that we see outside is a projection of our vasanas. But whereas all other phenomena are a projection of the unreal element of ego, the name and form, the Bhagavan is a projection of the reality within us. That is, ego is a mixture of reality and unreality. I am is real. This or that, this body is unreal. Ego is that mixture, that entanglement of I am this body, called Chit Jada Granti. That means the knot formed by the entanglement of awareness, which is I am, and non-awareness, which is the body. So we can say, I mean, these are explanations, whatever explanations they're given just to satisfy our mind. But we can say as an explanation, Bhagavan is a projection of the reality within us. Whereas all other phenomena are a projection of the unreal elements of ego. So long as we look outwards and we see the name and form of Bhagavan, we have great, I mean, if we've been drawn to Bhagavan's path, if we're drawn to his teachings, can we avoid having love for him? We all feel great love for Bhagavan as a person, but that is not what he actually is. Why we feel so much love for him? Because he is our own self we are seeing outside. So we are naturally drawn by, why are we all drawn to Bhagavan? Why we feel so much love for Bhagavan?
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying, Michael, is like when we realize that we are all the absolute, and whatever is seen out here is just a projection, not necessarily from ego. Bhagavan said we're all the same, you know.
Yes.
And when we're seeing this out here, it's not ego that we're seeing if we don't have any attachment to it, right? It's just isness. It's just suchness. It's
yes.
so. But if we call it phenomena,
yes.
Then there's a separation. Oh, there's phenomena. Here's me.
Yes.
But if we don't, if we don't call it phenomena, if we just embrace it as all oneness, then I don't get this difference that he is. In other words, and I remember, I can't remember where I read it, but I do remember Bhagavan saying, I think he said it on several occasions, that when we enter this silence that we do through self-inquiry or however we get there, that when we're in that place of silence, that's pure awareness. And I remember him saying the ego doesn't even exist, because the ego always rests in this silence.
Yes.
And then it's projected outward if we have, some kind of attachment or problem or whatever, But he says the ego doesn't even exist. So if we don't have any attachment to anything outside of this silence,
Mm.
then we are the absolute, and we can't be anything
Yes.
but that, right?
Yes, yes. But so long as we rise as ego, that is, attachment is the very nature of ego. In verse
But what are we calling ego? Are we calling ego the phenomenal world?
Ego is that which is aware of all these things, aware of all these phenomena. That is, Bhagavan says in verse 25 of Uludunapadu, he describes ego as Uruvatrapeya Hande. That means formless phantom ego. And he explains there how it comes into existence and stands. He said, grasping form, it comes into existence. Grasping form, it stands. Grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes. Leaving one form, it grasps another form. But if investigated, if sought, it takes flight.
So then our what we're trying to get to is just being pure light.
Yes, yes,
Pure light.
that
Yes.
is what we already are. But so long as we're looking outwards, we seem to be this ego, and consequently this body, and all this multiplicity seems to exist. What actually exists is only one, but we are now seeing it as many.
And then like Nirvikalpa Samadhi, I remember my first experience with that was like, there wasn't anything but light, the white background or whatever you want to call it, but there was some little
Yeah,
pinpoint of awareness that knew that there was no, I mean it was kind of, I can't call it separation because it was so intrinsically bound,
Yeah.
and yet that particular state didn't seem to be able to be perpetuated. But that must be what we're trying to get to, is where that state is
but
perpetuated.
a time will come when we'll be willing to let go completely, and then we will lose ourselves in that state, and then only that light of pure awareness will remain.
Okay, so there is a pure awareness in that light, but it has absolutely no form.
Absolutely no form.
Okay, well, I was given a preview.
Yeah. I mean, during the course of our spiritual practice, we may get so many experiences, which they are in a way, in a sense, a preview. But
Yeah.
when we have not seen it perfectly until we have lost ourselves in it, as Bhagavan says, Unadal Khan, becoming food is seeing. That only when we lose ourselves completely in that, never to come back again, then we are really seeing it.
And I've heard several people who have said that they've had a realization experience. They don't say I am realized, but they say they had the realization experience. So to me, that's one and the same thing. But I've heard them say that in that moment of realization, they did have kind of like that experience that I just described, the white awareness with that little finitesimal bit of awareness, but they made a decision to come back into form. In other words, I think that's the letting go that you're talking about, that there's some kind of fear there, that or some kind of immaturity that's not ready to move on into that. Would you say?
Yes.
But then they consider themselves realized, but they're not.
Yeah. I think so long as there's someone to consider I am realized, we are not realized.
Okay. Thank you. It's a trip.
It is indeed. It is indeed.
So we're getting pretty close to 12 o'clock here, our time, and I have to leave at noon. I have some family things. and we have questions from Ted and then questions from me. And so what I'd like to do, we could, or have Ted ask us questions and I'll set mine back till next time we gather.
Or would you like to ask your question now? And then when you, I mean, do you have time for me to answer your question now, or do you want to put it off till next time?
Well, let me ask the question and see what you say, because it's like I have no idea what words are coming, what you're going to think about it. So is that okay with you, Ted?
Okay, yes.
Not only is it okay with me, I was going to suggest that. I was going to make just a 20-second comment and then suggest that very thing. My comment is from the discussion I just heard between Rosemary and Michael, gave me a deeper thought of something I've tried to understand before. That this little self called Ted, which is ego, with a small t, thinks he's more than he is, trying to find the true self, actually is the writer of all the questions, not just for me, but all the questions presented today. But more importantly, is the writer of all the answers to all the questions. That this is all my drama. You might all say that about yourselves for this drama, but I think I can say that about myself for my drama.
Yes.
So, especially having said that,
Yes.
2 questions I pose already have answers that I'm able to write that are yet to be ferreted out for within myself. So, having said that, I'm going to pass to Marty. Marty, take your time.
Okay, there's one more clarification I'll give about that afterwards, but let Marty ask first.
Okay.
Okay.
Marty, just to remind you, make me a host before you leave so that the meeting doesn't end.
I will. Yeah.
Right.
I was leave this open anyhow.
Okay.
Okay, this comes out of Guru of Chakrakovai too. It says, only frivolous people with venomous ego, whose poison is the cause of all disease and misery, perform ceaseless austerities, tapas, to strengthen and lengthen the lifespan of the body, like one who takes medicine to prolong disease. Here, Bhagavan's referring to the body, understanding that Bhagavan speaks to the stage of spiritual development of the devotee. How much of the attention should we give the body? Excuse me. How much attention should we give the body if the body is so diseased? And why isn't suicide a viable option, or is it?
We don't actually need to give any attention to the body at all. The body is, how the body is to survive is already decided by prarabdha. So the body will do whatever actions are necessary according to prarabdha for it to experience its prarabdha. So we need not actually give any attention to the body. But because we still take this body to be I, we all have attachment to our body, and we all take care of the body. When we are sick, we try to take medicines and things. If it's according to destiny, we get better. If it's not according to destiny, we don't get better. So everything is happening according to destiny, but it seems to us that it depends on us. Only if I take care of this body, will I be able to recover from this illness or whatever. If the body, regarding your question about suicide, Bhagavan, when Bhagavan was asked about suicide, he said, suicide, the real suicide is egocide. That is the suicide we need. Merely killing the body is punishing the wrong one. He said, killing the body or doing any type of physical austerities is like if a person has committed a crime, instead of punishing the criminal, you beat the chair on which he's sitting. The cause of all the trouble is not the body, it's ego that says, I am this body. So rather than killing the body, we should try to kill this ego. The body has a certain destiny. Will continue living till the end of that, till that destiny is over. So we shouldn't try to to bring the life of the body to a premature end. Let it, if the body is diseased, it's going to die anyway. So, I mean, let everything take its course. We should be turning our attention within and thereby trying to eradicate ego. If we eradicate ego, all the problems are solved. But regarding the verse of Guru Vachakapravai, Bhagavan often used to say, this body is a disease. So if you try to prolong the life of the body, you're just trying to prolong the disease. So there are some yogis, there are certain yoga practices which are believed to be efficacious in extending the lifetime of the body. Of course, we cannot extend the lifetime of the body any more than it is destined to be extended. But there are yogis who believe that if they do such a yoga, they will be able to live longer and live healthier and everything. As Bhagavan says in this verse, it's just like taking medicine to prolong the disease. The body is a disease, but the root of the disease is ego. If we deal with that's the disease that we need to treat. Let the body take its own course. Let it live as long as it is destined to live. So as far as possible, we should be unconcerned about the body. We should be concerned only about one thing, attending to ourselves and thereby surrendering ourselves.
Okay, and then the next part to this is Bhagavan stated that it's fruitless for one to scrutinize the garbage, which is to be collectively thrown away. Does this have to do with remembering thoughts or dealing with consequences of actions of thoughts?
The particular context in which Bhagavan said this, in Indian philosophy, there are many different systems of philosophy in India, and each system of philosophy enumerates different tattvas. Tattvas are basically basic ontological entities. So some philosophies say there are 24 tattvas or 36 tattvas, or they have so many different classifications. Bhagavan said all this, scrutinizing all these philosophical concepts, this is all unnecessary, or analyzing how many tattvas are. According to Bhagavan, there is only one tattva. Tattva means, tat means or that, so tattva means thatness or itness. So tattva in effect means what actually exists. According to Bhagavan, there is only one tattva. In one of the verses of Aksharamai, the Aksharamai, 108 verses, it says, Tane Tane Tattvam. Oneself alone is the reality. So for Bhagavan, there's only one tattva. But there are so many other tattvas that are classified by other systems of philosophy. Bhagavan says, scrutinizing all these, that is going into all philosophical analysis is unnecessary. That's one way we can interpret that. But we can also interpret it more broadly, investigating anything other than ourselves. That is what we have to reject. Like the barber's hair, like the hair in the barber shop. After the barber's cut the hair of so many clients during the day, at the end of the day, he doesn't go analyzing how many short hairs, how many long hairs, how many gray hairs, how many black hairs, how many brown hairs, how many red hairs. All that hair is just to be swept up and thrown away, like that. Everything other than ourselves is to be discarded. So why to analyze, why to investigate anything other than ourselves? The only thing we should investigate is who am I? So like many teachings of Bhagavan, we can interpret it in different, we can interpret it in different contexts.
Well, the good part about that is I don't have many dark hairs to investigate anymore when I leave the barber.
Right. Well, if we could get rid of everything other than ourselves so easily, that would be good. And we can, if we are willing to. The trouble is we are not willing to sweep up and throw out all the garbage. We're still clinging to a garbage.
Well, thank you very much. I love the letting go of the tree analogy. That's something that I think has a lot to do with, especially whenever any doubt creeps in, or, well, this is too important, I can't let go of this. It's like,
Yeah.
this is meaningful. It's like, well, let go of the tree and see what happens.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, does anybody have any last comments or
Well,
questions?
Ted was going to, we still have Ted's question.
That's all right. I'll just strain. I'm having a little difficulty hearing all of your comments, but I'm catching most of them.
Okay.
It's
Can
okay
I
for
just
me
say
to
one more
say
thing, Ted,
separate
about
questions.
what you were saying earlier. You were equating Ted with ego. Ted is not the ego. Ego is the I that says, I am Ted. That is, there is a distinction. Ted is the name of a person.
Yes.
This person is a body or mind. That is not ego. Ego is that which takes that body or mind to be I.
Okay, so what I said isn't true then, that
Well,
all of you are a projection on my own dream?
yes, that is true. That is true. But
Is it also true that?
Ted is as much a projection of your dream as Michael or anyone else.
Okay, then is it also true? This is the point I'm trying to get to. I can always learn much more about the ego, but coming from Ted, the small self that thinks he is real, you're not only a projection on my dream, but aren't your questions and my answers and your answers also coming from my dream projected onto the screen?
Sorry, can you say that again? Because I was thinking something else. Okay.
The question of ego aside,
Yes.
isn't this Ted, the phenomenal mind-body
Mm.
dream illusion of reality,
Yes.
also the creator of all of your questions and all of your answers, including mine?
No, no. Ted is as much as a creation as all the other phenomena you see. That is, in a dream, who is the dreamer? The dreamer is the one who sees the dream. The one who sees the dream experiences itself as a person in that dream. And it says, I am Ted, or I am Michael, or I am someone or other. But Ted is not the dreamer. Ted is something that is dreamed, that is dreamt. You, ego, are dreaming Ted and dreaming I am Ted. So
Well,
Ted is no more real than all the other people in your dream.
then I have to ask this question, even though I've heard your answers before, and then I'm ready to dismiss this topic because it's one I chew on far too long. And the more I dwell on it, the more confused I tend to become. So if Ted is not the dream, Ted is
Not the dreamer.
not the dreamer, rather, fundamentally, it's my belief that all dreams have to come from somewhere. So my question would be, why would my dream come from the reality of who I am? Where does the dream come from?
The dream comes from ego. Ego is the I, but is aware of itself as I am Ted.
Ego isn't the dream also?
Ego is the dreamer. The dreamer is aware of itself as I am Ted.
Okay.
But Ted is not the dreamer. Ted is what the dreamer identifies as itself.
That's what I needed clarity on.
That is ego, that in verse 24 of Ulludunapadu, Bhagavan explains it very clearly. He says, that is, ego is neither the body, nor is it Satchit. What he says there is, Dada Udul Nanenadu. That means the insentient body does not say I. Though he's using the word say here, he's using that in a metaphorical sense. That is, the body is not aware of itself as I. Being awareness, Satchit, does not rise. So ego is neither the body, because the body is not aware of itself as I, nor is it Sat Chit, because Sat Chit doesn't rise. But in between these two, one thing called I rises as the extent of the body. That one thing I, that is ego. It rises and identifies itself as the body. So the ego is neither the pure awareness, the Sat Chit, nor is it the body, but it's something that rises in between and takes the here in between. He doesn't mean literally in between in the sense, for example, if you tell me about a newspaper story you've read and ask me whether it's true, I may say it's neither true nor false, but somewhere in between. What that means is it's got certain elements of truth, it's got certain elements of falsehood. So we can't say it's wholly true or we can't say it's wholly false. It's a mixture of truth and falsehood. So he's using the term in between in that sense. So ego is neither the Sat Chit, the pure awareness, nor is it the body, but it's something that takes on the property of both. So as ego, we are aware, which is the property of Sat Chit. And as ego, we seem to be limited within the confines of this body, limited to the extent of this body. So we take on the properties of body, certain qualities of body and certain qualities of awareness, and we mix them together. So in the next sentence, he says, this is Chit Jada Granti. Chit Jada Granti means the knot between Chit, awareness, and Jada, what is not aware. What is not aware is the body. The Chit there is the Sat Chit, the real awareness. So ego is neither the pure awareness, nor is it the insentient body, but it is not formed by the entanglement of these two. This is, he says, this I that rises, it is Chit Jada Granti, bandham, that means bondage, jiva, that's soul, nupame, subtle body, ahande, ego, samsaram, this samsara, and mind. So ego is neither the body, nor is it the Sat Chit. It is some spurious entity that rises between the two and takes the properties of both. It's a type of awareness, but it's not real awareness. It's only a seeming awareness. And it mistakes itself to be this body, which is insentient. And here, when Bhagavan talks about body, in another verse, he clarifies that the body, what he means by the term body, is not just the physical form, but all the five sheaths. That's the physical body, the life, or prana, the mind, the intellect, and the will, because we experience all these as one bundle. So that's what he's referring to here as the insentient body. So these
You helped me a whole lot with this, but I'm still left with one question that I'm not altogether clear of, and I'm sure it's me, not anybody else.
Yeah.
So it's really been helpful to hear about the truer nature of the ego than I've ever given it credit for before, versus the mind-body self.
Yeah.
But if it's not the mind-body self, and if it's not Satchitananda, being awareness, bliss, but somewhere in between, as you suggest, where does that come from? It sounds like toothpaste being squeezed out of a toothpaste container somehow.
Well, that
into
is what
reality.
Bhagavan says. It is neither this nor that. So
Yes.
we need to investigate what is it. If we investigate what is it, we find there's no such thing at all.
So it's neither the dream nor the self. But again, that's a good explanation, but I still am at a loss to know from where does it spring?
That's what Bhagavan says. Okay, if it springs, it can only spring from ourselves, because there's nowhere else it could spring from. That is, ego is not present in sleep. What is present in sleep? Only we are present there. So since ego rises from sleep, it's only rising from us. So it doesn't come from anywhere other than from ourselves. But if so long as we are aware of anything other than ourselves, we're aware of ourselves as so long as we're aware of phenomena, we're aware of ourselves as a set of phenomena. We're aware of ourselves as this body. Among all these phenomena in this world, I am limited to this body. I am this body. That's as ego, we are always aware of ourselves as I am this body. But body is not what we actually are. We are neither, because the body is not aware, but we are, as ego, we are aware. So we are neither the body, nor are we the pure awareness. We are something in between. Bhagavan says, if we investigate this ego to see where it comes from, we will find there is no such thing at all. So when there's no ego, since within the absence of ego, there is nothing else, because everything else appears only in the view of ourselves as ego. So when we investigate ourselves, ego dissolves back into its source, which is pure awareness, and what remains is only pure awareness, which is what we always actually are.
Well, that makes a lot more sense. I'm much clearer in my understanding the delineation among all those factors that you described.
Yeah.
I don't, unless I've been asleep at the wheel for all these years, I don't recall hearing it expressed this way before so well. So thank you on that, and thank you for everything.
It's implicit in so many teachings, but it's not. Bhagavan has made it crystal clear that ego is not the person. Ego always identifies itself as I am this person, I am this body, but ego is not this body or this person. Ego is the false awareness that takes this person to be itself. So ego is not Ted. Ego is that which is aware of itself as I am Ted.
The writer of the
Ego
dream.
is neither pure I am, nor is it Ted. It is the mixture of the two as I am Ted.
Thank you, Michael.
I guess I have one question, and maybe we can finish with that. You've said over and over again that, as long as there's phenomena, there is ego. And the reason why there is ego is that we do have some attachment. Are we conscious of that attachment, or is it something more subtle? Because I think we all, at least at some probably superficial level, want to let go of everything and become realized and sink into that infinite bliss that we already are. So what is it that, maybe it's different from everybody, but maybe you can comment on that, and that'll be our final subject.
That is superficially, we want to be free of all this. That is, we know that all these phenomena, they create trouble for us in so many ways. But we are still, though at the surface level, we say we want to be free of all these things, we are still deep down, we have a deep-rooted attachment. Bhagavan once said, everyone who comes here says they have come only for jnana, for moksha. If I show a small sample of moksha, all the crows will fly away and I'll be left sitting here alone.
Okay. So is it subtle? Is it subconscious, or is it just our unwillingness to look?
Rather than saying subtle or subconscious, I'd say it's deep-rooted. Yes,
Deep-rooted.
In a way, it is subtle, but it is very, very deep-rooted.
It's deep-rooted, and there's just some resistance on our part to go that deep. Is that what you're saying?
The very nature of ego, as Bhagavan says,
right.
Ego comes into existence grasping form. That means ego, it comes into existence grasping form, it stands grasping form, and grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes. So attachment is the very nature of ego.
It's the very nature of ego. And is it our Atma Vichara? Is it the ego that is turning its attention inward?
Yes.
Okay.
And to the extent that we turn our attention inwards, we are thereby letting go of other things. So by this practice, we are cultivating the willingness to let go.
Right. Well, we, meaning ego, what we think we are, that attention, the conscious waking attention needs to shift inward or turn within.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's not Dan or Michael who is doing it. It is ego, the one who is aware of itself as I am Daniel or I am Michael.
That's right.
So it is ego that is to do it. But though ego is to do it, ego will never realize itself, because when ego realizes itself, as soon as it realizes what it actually is, it ceases to be ego and remains as that.
And that is true suicide.
Yes, that is the true suicide.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you so much again.
Yes. I also have to say thank you, because but that is, whatever answers I give is because of the questions. So thank you for all the questions, because only the questions bring out all these clarifications.
Yes,
So
I agree. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. It's an honor to have you help us each month on the first Sunday of the month. Thank you so much.
Yes,
It's not my doing.
Thank you, Michael.
It's all Bhagavan's doing.
yes, indeed.
Well,
We are
everybody.
nothing.